أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. Amma ba'd, sisters and brothers in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We are into the sixth session of the Tafsir of Surat al-Qiyamah. As the name indicates by itself, the theme of this surah is Qiyamat, the day of judgment or the day of resurrection. The literal translation would be yes, resurrection, which is bringing the human beings back to stand up from Qiyam. That's where you have Qiyamah. We looked at the earlier ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this is an event which is surely going to happen. And He begins with the two qasam that we looked at it. Let me just emphasize one more point, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about Qiyamat, it's interesting if you look at in some of these ayat in the shorter surahs of the Quran, towards the latter part, you will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the past tense when He talks about Qiyamat. He says, إِذَا وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةِ. If you do the literal translation, it means when the event happened in past tense. And we know Qiyamah has not yet happened. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do this? Just to emphasize the point. As I mentioned earlier, that Mushrikeen of Makkah had difficulty in accepting this phenomenon of resurrection. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for you it is an issue of wondering and thinking and doubting. For me, as if it has already happened. And therefore Allah uses past tense just to emphasize that point. And so in the earlier ayat we saw where He began by saying La uqsimu biyawm al-qiyamah wa la uqsimu bin nafs al-lawwama. And then He goes on to say that this is a reality which is going to happen, and the doubt that people have about it. And then we reach to the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the deniers will basically, they will question. And these deniers are those who actually don't want to believe in Qiyamat so that they can have free ride in whatever they want to do. So wherever you see that attitude, that let us be free to whatever we do, this is a phenomenon where Qiyamat doesn't come into in focus at all. And so continuing with that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it will happen. It will happen in a way that your eyes will be dazzled, the moon will lose its light, and the sun and the moon both will be folded. This is where when that day happens and when the Qiyamah happens, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and this is ayat number 10 for tonight, يَقُولُ الْإِنسَانَ يَوْمَئِذٍ أَيْنَ الْمَفَرُّ. On that day man will say, here man of course, just to make sure ladies understand it here, it's not in a gender sense, it means insan. So it covers everyone here. Instead of saying a long, on that day human being, putting two words, we just put one there. And so that day, on that day, man will say, أَيْنَ الْمَفَرُّ. Where is the escape route? How do we get away from here? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He'll respond to them, كَلَّا لَا وَزَرَ. No, indeed, there is no refuge today. There is no escape route today. إِلَى رَبِّكَ يَوْمَئِذٍ الْمُسْتَقَرُّ. On that day, the abode will be towards your Lord. And so these are the three ayats, inshallah, we'll look at it. In the beginning, this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the reaction of the non-believers. This statement that the man will say, where is the escape? This is not a mu'min who is speaking. This is actually the words or reaction of the non-believers, the deniers, those who do not believe or were not expecting the Qiyamah. And so this is where when actually it will happen, those who denied, for them this will be utter distress. And when you are into utter distress, you look for a way out. You look, where is the exit sign so I can run out, whenever you face a danger, difficulty or problems. And so this will be their reaction. Ayn al-mafar. Mafar, the place of farar. You know what is farar? To run away, to flee. So mafar means the place where you will run away and go away from the judgment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds that today there is no way to flee away from the judgment. Kalla, kalla means no, never. La wadhar, there is no refuge, no escape, no way to flee, no farar. Rah farar nahi. Now wazarun means it is used for a cave in the mountain, when you are traveling, or if there is storm or something or danger, you would seek refuge in the cave, or a fort, for example. So this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, on that day, la wazar, there will be no refuge at all for anyone. Ila rabbika yawma'idhin al-mustaqar. On that day, if there is a place of settling down, abode, istiqrar, that will be towards your Lord. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically says that the only place where a person can find a refuge and have peace and rest in that area, it is with your Lord, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So ayat number 10 and 12, the words are actually there, al-mafar, the path of fleeing or escape, and al-mustaqar, the place where a person is settled. This is where you normally even, you can say, where is your mustaqar, where do you live? This is where you actually reside and rest. And so on that day, the mustaqar is only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is another way also to explain that ayat is by looking at this ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal insan. And whenever he addresses insan, here he is talking about all human beings, believers and non-believers alike. إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ كَدْحًا. Kadh means to put extra effort, to work hard. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whether you believe in me or not, whether you plan to meet me or not, you have to realize, إِنَّكَ كَادِحٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ كَدْحًا. You are coming towards me. فَمُلَاقِيهِ مُلَاقَات. And then you will encounter Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so everyone has to finally encounter Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. There is no farar from that. It is only to see whether your kadh and your hard work of moving towards Allah is consciously, you are preparing for it, getting yourself ready for it, so you can have salvation in the hereafter, or you are going the other way, running away from Him, ignoring Him, denying Him, disbelieving in Him, disobeying Him. Eventually you also will be taken to Allah on the day of Qiyamah. But then your state at that time would be the distressful and the horrible one. And so, all human beings, their ultimate destination, whether they realize or not, they believe or not, they work for it or not, they expect it or not, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fortunate ones are those who believe in Him, who take His guidance and prepare themselves for that day of encountering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is Surah Al-Inshiqaq, ayat number 6. One of the scenarios that we see on the day of Qiyamah would be that, people will start blaming Shaytan. And it's so easy. And I don't say he's the guilty one or not. He is. No doubt about it. But this issue of blaming, this is where we have to realize. There are many, many interesting dialogues between people on the day of Qiyamah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been really, He goes out of His way to portray what will happen, what people will say, what will be the response. This is only one ayat from the communication of the disbelievers with Shaytan. قال الشيطان لما قضي الأمر, when the issues will be decided, when the Qiyamah will happen, Shaytan will say to his followers, إن الله وعدكم وعد الحق. God surely promised you a true promise. وَوَعَدْتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ. And I gave you a promise which I failed to fulfill. This is the reality. You took my words, and this is where you are the failure. وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ. This is important. And I had no authority over you. إِلَّا أَن دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي. I just called you. Do this, come this way, and you accepted it. You answered my call. I didn't force you. You willingly, made that choice, and therefore, فَلَا تَلُومُونِي. Therefore, do not blame me. وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Blame yourselves. This is what I'm saying. Even Shaitan is going to say, when these people will turn around and say, I just paraphrased some of the ayat where they say, do I know you? I have nothing to do with you. Whatever is happening to you is because of your own choice. I didn't force you. I just told you to do this and you accepted it. So when he says this, وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ. I had no power or authority over you. I didn't force you. وَمَا أَنَا بِمُصْرِخُكُمْ وَلَا أَنْتُمْ بِمُصْرِخِي. Today I can't help you, neither can you help me. إِنِّي كَفَرْتُ بِمَا أَشْرَكْتُمُونِي مِنْ قَبْلِ. Then he says, and when you associated me with God as your leader, I disassociate myself from you today. I have nothing to do with you. I'm doing kufr from you. And this is where إِنَّ الظَّالِمِينَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَلِيمٌ. These are also words of the Shaitan. That those who are unjust, they will have severe punishment. And so, Shaitan is going to abandon his followers on the day of Qiyamah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has talked about this issue of Shaitan very clearly. And that's where I would like to slightly, now, we'll continue with the other ayat tomorrow. But digress from that ayat to this issue of Shaitan, that we have to realize that Shaitan is an open enemy. In Surah Yasin, what do you recite? إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌ مُبِينٌ. He is an open enemy of human beings. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear that you have an enemy from day one, and that is the Shaitan. So be careful. Now Shaitan has not been given a special power over us. He doesn't have any direct point of access. This is where he says, وَمَا لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ. I don't have any power over you. I just da'awtukum. I gave you the invitation, the da'wah, and you accepted it. However, Shaitan's entry points are our own sins. And this is where I'd like to stop. When we blame the Shaitan, we have to realize that before we blame the Shaitan, we have to blame ourselves. Shaitan doesn't have the ability to force us. We are giving access to the Shaytan when we commit sins. If we don't commit sins, or if we refrain from most of them, then Shaytan will have no access. So before we blame the Shaytan, we have to blame ourselves. One of the most dangerous thing that he does is that he will make the evil deeds look okay, normal or even good. And when we commit serious sins, he will say, oh, this is fine, it's not that important. These days we hear, for example, oh, if you do like this, Allah doesn't look at petty issues. This is from people who are on the pulpit, from our own community. Remember that thought. That when Allah says, because somebody was discussing, he was saying, oh, whether you do wudu this way or this way, doesn't matter. Baba, you are supposed to be a Shia alim talking to the Shia audience. What are you saying? And this idea and mentality that, oh, these are petty issues, Allah doesn't care about it. Well, then why do we have the ayat of Quran about it? Why do we have the Sunnah of Rasulullah there? Why do we have the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt about it? If these are petty issues. So we have to think about it. You see, it's not only that he will make the evil deeds look good, but even something that we are doing wrong it doesn't matter. And so the biggest strategy of Shaitan is glamorizing evil deeds. Taz'een. Zinat? Taz'een means to make something zinat, to make something beautiful, glamorous. And that is the strategy of the Shaitan. If you look at one ayat of Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is part of a long conversation he has, after he refused to do sajda to Adam alayhi salam, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you really are now doomed. And I banish you. And this is where he says, I have worshipped you for thousands of years. Now that I am into that bad situation because of this man, Adam, give me a life as long as his children are alive. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, okay, go, I'll give you a long life. He doesn't say, till Qiyamat, ila waqtin ma'loom, till a day that Allah knows. And so it's not Qiyamat, it's not the end of the time before that. And then, now that he had this kind of assurance that I'm going to live for a long time, then he says that, Allah, I'm going to attack them from all directions. I'm going to sit there, trap them, tempt them. And then he says, قَالَ رَبِّي بِمَا أَغَوَيْتَنِي. One of the things he says, my Lord, now that you have consigned me to perversity, لَأُزَيَّنَّنَّ لَهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. I will surely glamorize for them on the earth. What? The sins. Whatever bad that they do, I will make it a zenith to them. And I will basically misguide ajma'een. لَأُغْوَيَنَّهُمْ ajma'een. I will misguide all of them, all the children of Adam. But this is the interesting part, that even Shaitan knew that I can misguide people. At that time he realized he has really spoken beyond his ability. He knows his limitation. So he now says, إِلَّا عِبَادَكَ مِنْهُمُ الْمُخْلَصُونَ. He says to Allah, I'm going to misguide all of them. Then he stops himself. Except your purified servants among them. Mukhlasun, not those who purify themselves. Mukhlis, not mukhlis, mukhlas. Mukhlas means those who have been purified. And that is, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرُكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. So those who doubt about the Ahl Kisa and their purity and their isma, at least should learn from Shaitan. That he also knows. He says, I'm going to misguide all of them, all the children of Adam. But then he knows his limitation. He says, Illa ibadaka minhumul mukhlasin. And a point for reflection. How does he know about them now, although they are not born? Think about it. We'll discuss it some other time. Now, when we talk about this issue of, making the sins look okay, I'll give you one example before I continue. You look at what is happening with the definition of marriage. I mentioned it last night also, but to connect with this glamorizing, strategy of Shaitan. Bible says clearly that same-sex marriage is not right. You know what they've done now? Because even in the church there is a dispute about it. Catholic Church is still on the right side. But the Anglican Church, those scholars and bishops and archbishops among them in Africa, Middle East and Asia, they still say, Bible says this is a great sin. But the Anglican Church, leaders in England and North America, they say, no, it's okay. And when you ask them, they say, well, God says He created man in His own image. Therefore, also the people who are into this, they are also image of God. This is what is known as Tafsir bil-Rai. Even if that sentence has come in the Old Testament, it's not in that meaning. That whoever does, commit a sin, that is also a reflection of the image of God. No. This is where Shaitan basically brings this kind of thoughts. So I just was looking at my notes, and I have a series on Shaitan. Actually, I did the whole month of Ramadan in 2006 at Bayview. I wasn't here that year. I don't know what happened. I was just looking at the dates in the notes. But so other than the major nights, I talked about the issue of Shaitan, and one of the points was, what are the access points that Shaitan has to misguide human beings? So I'm not going to detail. I'll just giving you the list of what I have discussed in more detail in 2006. Number one, jealousy, hasad. And I'm asking the younger ones here, do you know the first example of jealousy in history, in the Quran? Habil and Qabil, okay? What about between brothers? I'm talking about a younger one, not you guys there. No. Jealousy between brothers. There's a whole chapter about it. No? You there? Okay, then we'll go to this elderly here. Yeah. Jealousy between brothers? Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers. Okay. There's one more question about it, but we will come to that later on. Second is wastage. You hear the announcement every day here. When you talk about israf and tabdhir, israf means extravagance, spending more than you have, and tabdhir means wastage. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, mubadhirin, those who do tabdhir and wastage, they are ikhwanu shayateen. These are the words of the Quran. They are brethren of the Shaitan. Number three, insincerity in giving charity, riyah. To do it just to show off. Number four, intoxication, khamr. This is one of the powerful tools that the Shaitan uses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about it. The way I explain that would be that, Shaitan targets a mu'min and he says, okay, let's make him forget his prayers, or prevent him from doing charity, this and that, or, make him miss his fast. But then these are all individual, points that he has to go and attack that one same individual. But he knows if he gets that person hooked to intoxicants, then he doesn't have to worry about anything else. Intoxicants for Shaitan is the autopilot. Program the person now, even the namaz will be missed, roza will be missed, charity will be forgotten, all good things will go. And so that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentions this in Quran. Number 5, gambling. Sometimes we take it lightly, but this is another method that Shaitan, gains access to the believers. Evil company. If we associate with the people who are sinful, this is where then Shaitan basically through them would influence that believer. Number 7, ghadab and anger. One of the Anbiya actually asked Shaitan, at what moment do you think you have the most impact on a person? He says, when that person is angry. I actually attack him right at that time. Number 8, arrogance. What is the first example of arrogance in the Quran? Shaitan himself. Number 9, doubt and uncertainty. Especially when it comes to the issue of doubt in Aqidah. If you look at these daily short du'as for the month of Ramadan, from 29th till the end of the month, you will see there is a dua where the names of Allah in the beginning changes, but the content is same. And you will see every night, one of the things that we ask for is وَأَن تَحَبَ لِي يَقِينًا تُبَاشِرُ بِهِ قَلْبِي. Allah bless me with yaqeen, conviction which stays with my heart. وَإِيمَانًا يُذْهِبُ الشَّكَّ عَنِّي. And give me the iman which get rid of the doubts and uncertainty. So that's a very important issue. Of course, doubts in many other practical issues also is a concern, but when it comes to aqidah, it's a higher level of problem. And number 10, the last in the list here, is usury and interest, riba. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says those who devour that should know that they are actually coming to fight Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are in the harb. And so this is considered to be a very serious issue, and one of the access points used by the Shaitan. Let me go back to number 1. You have a situation where, let's say, somebody has been blessed with something good by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is jealousy there? There is a term in Islamic akhlaq. One is hasad and one is ghibta. They are similar, but one is okay, the other is not. Hasad is that a person sees something good in someone else and he says, God, why him? Take it from him and give it to me. This is hasad. Whereas ghibta is that you see something good in another person and then you pray, oh Allah, also bless me. That is nothing wrong, because you look at others' good examples and then you have that desire to have the same quality. So ghibta is okay. Hasad is when you actually would like that person to be deprived of that. And sometimes it reaches to a point where it's kind of a hidden shirk, not technical, not theologically. Because sometimes when we say, "Oh Allah, why did you give this, this wealth or knowledge or status or health to this person?" It means that we actually consider ourselves to be partner of God. That He should have consulted us before deciding whether you should give to that person or not. If you really think about it that way, it's kind of a very hidden, level of shirk, which doesn't make a Muslim technically mushrik, but it is a serious issue. Amir al-Mu'minin Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, in one of his khutbahs actually talks about the Shaytan. It's a longer khutbah, but one part of it dealing with Shaytan. He says, "I enjoin you the fear of displeasing God, ittaqullah, who has left no excuse regarding what He has warned you against. He has provided you the guidance. Anbiya came, Mursaleen came, books came, the Imams are there, Quran is there. He has exhausted all the arguments and methods of guidance so you know the right path. So there will be no excuse on the day of Qiyamah to say, I didn't know." Then he said, He has warned you about the enemy, and that is the Shaytan. Aduwwum mubin, he is the open enemy. Be careful. He penetrates the heart secretly, and he whispers into your ears. He makes false promises that he cannot keep. He is the one who represents evil sins in an attractive shape, and it takes the major sins and makes them seem insignificant. And this is where we have to realize that, whenever we are in the situation of doubt, I talked about the doubt on the level of iman and belief, but on the practical level, and this is where I maybe repeated this many times. You see, sometimes we face a situation on a practical level where things are black and white. We know this is allowed and this is not allowed. There is no issue there that we have to follow what is the right way. But then there is an area which is known as the gray area. We don't know. We are not sure about it. Whether about the hukum and the command itself, or about the subject matter or the entity, whether this is halal or not. What do you do? This is where we go to Amir al-Mu'minin, where he actually praises one of his companions who had died during the time of the Imam. And Imam says, I had a brother in faith. So in a way, Imam honors him and respects him, that he was my brother in deen. And among the 7 to 8 qualities of this person that the Imam talks about, one of the things he says that whenever this person will find himself in a doubtful situation on the matters of practice, he doesn't know should he do this way or that way, he would always go back to his own heart and his desire and see what does his desire say. And then he will go the opposite way, just to make sure that he is on the right path. Very different from our strategy. We say, Maulana, just say it. Is it haram or not? Don't say me maybe ihtiyat or precaution and this and that. Just tell us it's yes or no. But many places it's not yes and no. It could be a gray area, and this is where you have to do ihtiyat. Especially that is the standard that Amir al-Mu'minin is giving to us as his followers. Salawat. Then Ali continues that khutbah where he says, therefore you should fear lest Shaitan infects you with his disease, or leads you astray through his call and marches on you with his horsemen and footmen. Because by my life, he has put the arrow in the bow for you, and he has stretched the bow strongly, and has aimed at you from a nearby position. So he's sitting somewhere hidden, close by, looking for the opportunity to let that arrow go to you. And so this is where Amir al-Mu'minin says, be careful about the Shaytan, because that is the basis of all the problems we could have on the day of Qiyamah. Salawat. I have a couple of questions here. One is related to the discussion we had yesterday about namazi ayat for marhum parents. There was a question that, if a person had not done namazi ayat for many, many years, now they realize, that they have neglected, then how do you calculate? As I said that, at least doing 2 namazi ayat per year would be, inshallah, will fulfill the obligation. Now, if somebody is doing for marhum, for the deceased parents or someone else, the question is, should they do it in the normal way, the longer way, or the shorter method that we discussed yesterday? You have the option of doing both ways. You have to do 2 rakats and 5 ruku in both. You do the shorter way or the longer way, that doesn't matter even for the marhumin. The second question is that if a person, this is about the sadaqah given to from a non-Sayyid friend. Can that person who is not a Sayyid give the sadaqah that he or she has taken out for the salamati of the Imam Zamana Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Faraj Sharif? See, some people take out sadaqah of Imam Zamana for his protection. And so the question is, can that sadaqah be given to Sayyid or not? Because, sadaqah is not permissible for Sayyid. Now, the question here is, it depends on who is giving. Although the sadaqah was taken out by this person for the Imam who is a Sayyid, it doesn't mean that it can be given to the Sayyid. It all depends who is the giver of that sadaqah. If it is a non-Sayyid person, then he or she cannot give to a Sayyid. If it is a Sayyid who is giving out that sadaqah, then he or she can give it to Sayyid or non-Sayyid alike. There wouldn't be any difference there. Any question today? We still have some time. 5 minutes?
Yeah. Up to 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Can you expound a little bit more on Radd Mazalim and who are the recipients of that?
Radd Mazalim means, Mazalim means the injustice which has been done, referring to, violation of somebody's right, whether monetary or behavior-wise or whatever. And a person doesn't know. Probably he thinks, we might have hurt somebody knowingly, or might have, taken something, forgot about it, or that person is no more there. We don't know, how to find that person, or even his heirs. Then what do you do in that case? One of the way of dealing with those unspecified, wrongdoings that a person would have done out of ignorance or negligence also sometimes, would be to give Radd Mazalim. Radd means to avert the implication of the zulm done. And so this is actually giving some money in the name of the person that you thought you have wronged that person. And this is to be used in the same way as Sahm Imam of Khums is used. Normally you would need permission of the marja for using Sahm al-Imam, but when it comes to Radd Mazalim, in this you can dispense that yourself to any deserving or poor needy Shia. Okay, so the question is that there is a lady who cannot fast because of her health, and so she is paying fidya. And the question is whether she can pay the fidya to her own daughter-in-law who lives separately and they are in need and poor. In that relationship of mother-in-law to daughter-in-law, mother-in-law is not responsible for her maintenance, therefore she can give it to her. But let's say it was the father, for example, then there would be an issue, because you cannot give sadaqah and charity from yourself to somebody who are your dependent and your responsibility. Any? Yes.
I was just wondering, the Qiyamah, will that take place after the death of the 12th Imam?
Of course. When we talk about the end of the world, it means everybody is going to die. There will be no living soul on that day. Means Malakul Maut will be the one managing this whole process, and then Allah will also put him to death. And there will nobody there, and then the resurrection will start. Yes. No, that's not what it means. You see, the ayat of Quran, whenever they talk about Allah and the sifat of Allah, these are all mutashabihat. Mutashabihat means these are the words of allegorical sense, symbolically used, because Allah is not a human being. And so any description of Allah which has a human dimension in it is to be considered to be mutashabihat, and this is where we have to go to the muhkamat, and this is where we need the help of the ahadith of our imams to understand that. Wajh is used, you see, let me give you the wrong tafsir first. The Wahhabis actually believe that you have to go with the literal wordings of the ayat of Quran, even when it comes to Allah's description. So you ask them, what does this ayat mean? It means everything of Allah will perish other than His face. Doesn't make sense. And this is where the tafsir of Ahlul Bayt is that wajh means the essence of Allah. When we look at one another, we only know one another through the face. The face is the identity of the person. Or we say somebody, he is wajhul qawm. He is the face of the community. You know, so that is the essence of that person. So wajhullah means zatullah. Not the face, because Allah doesn't have a face. Just as He doesn't have hands, although there is an ayat which says, you know, Allah's hands are not tied, they are open. Because when Yahud said, oh, His hands are closed, He is stingy and bakhil, Allah didn't like that. And in the ayat came down, bal yadahu mabsutatan. You know, now He puts two hands. He says, both my hands are open. Well, there's no hands there. He's just saying, when we say somebody's hands are open, it means he's a generous person. He's the one who gives very freely. He's not bakhil. And so that wajh is in that meaning. Yeah, but that's in a sense that, you know, they are reflection of Allah in dunya. But not in the sense that they are wajhullah in the real sense, because Allah doesn't have a wajh in that way. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.